Let me welcome Tim up here to talk about that message right there. Finding our voice, differentiating our message for effective advocacy. Tim?
Thank you for that generous introduction, Rich. I would like to say, yes, we did get paid by Enron. They owed us $15,000 and we had written it off, and then 3 days after they declared bankruptcy, the check showed up in the mail. We didn't complain. I'd like to begin today by thanking not just Rich and Steve for giving us the opportunity to talk to you about messaging, but also the entire team at NGVA in Washington, because they've been very supportive and provided a great deal of assistance to us in the development of the new NGV Forum blog earlier this year. The NGV Forum is an important development in messaging for NGVA for a lot of reasons that will be evident in my remarks this morning. Updated every week, the NGV Forum gives NGVA an important voice in the online dialogue about NGVs and the challenges and opportunities our industry faces. And it positions NGVA as a trusted source and thought leader for the NGV industry. Since launching the blog in June, more than 4,000 industry managers have visited the blog and/or participated in the dialogue options that are available there. That represents a significant percentage of all the companies and NGVA members engaged in our industry. Yesterday, Rich reported that the weekly newsletter is sent out to a database of 1,200 customers and members. Well, that 4,000 number then means that the blog has increased exposure of the newsletter fourfold since we launched it just 120 days ago. We'd also like to thank all of our members and friends of NGVA who stepped forward in participating in the advertising program on the blog as well. Today we'd like to talk about finding our voice as our industry grows and what we need to do to differentiate our messages to have effective advocacy for NGVs. Interest in NGVs is growing rapidly, as you know, appealing to a broader array of fleets, generating a burgeoning consumer market, attracting the attention of environmental advocates, and consequently, garnering greater policymaker scrutiny. As our market matures and our target audience's perceptions about our technologies develop, sharpening the focus of our collective customer-facing messages will be essential to advancing market-wide acceptance of NGVs as a preferred mode of transportation. So must our ability to differentiate our messages and our value propositions, as Rich mentioned a few minutes ago, to advocate more convincingly, frequently, and objectively. Much of the messaging the natural gas industry has already created is very high quality. Here's an excellent example of that in a message that's already being done to promote natural gas. May we have the first video, please?
The only way this century will be another American century is if we confront at last the price of our dependence on oil.
The United States will not be dependent on any other country for the energy we need.
Our dependence on foreign oil is still too great.
Energy crisis is real.
We seek to fully deregulate natural gas.
And I'll put incentives back into the domestic energy industry.
We need a long-term energy strategy.
And it must act to increase energy production at home.
Yet we import more oil today than ever before.
We're tired of waiting. It's time for us to lead the way. Why? Because American energy independence starts with us, people who see the value in developing our own natural resources. Sadly, our nation spends more than $1 million a minute on foreign oil, and that's far too much. Our country needs a change of direction, a direction that develops our own oil and natural gas resources to create jobs across the country, revitalize communities, and ensure our national security. Our nation must realize that American energy can power our homes, cook our food, and fuel our vehicles without foreign oil. Declare your energy independence.
Our dependence on foreign oil.
We seek to fully deregulate natural
If we
gas.
import more oil today,
Share this message and sign our declaration at chk.com/independence.
Thank you, Chesapeake, for that. Despite the dead-on clarity of this commercial and the corporate effort that stands behind it, energy independence seems to be an elusive goal that is out of our control. So this morning, I would like to talk about those things that are in our control. Here are some things to consider. First, we need to decide going forward which messages are timely and which will resonate with our current and potential NGV customer segments. And we should think about whether policy initiatives, like achieving energy independence, are achievable goals for us to promote, rather than specific NGV vehicle products, features, and benefits that will get customers to respond, buy, and grow our businesses. Second, we need to begin thinking about having a unified core message that we can promote consistently together and across all media. A message that differentiates the NGV industry from all other alternative energy and vehicle options while coexisting alongside utility and distribution providers. In other words, NGV as a vehicle category needs to be a brand. Third, every message we communicate about NGVs should advance us towards a measurable goal, recognizing that not all our customers and prospect segments are on the same page. We will need an industry-wide effort to place prospects in what we at BBG call a path to buy, moving customers and prospects from awareness to trial to acceptance to purchase. In short, whether measured in dollars or consumer confidence, there has to be a return on investment. And fourth, one company alone cannot support any one message with enough dollars to penetrate the public consciousness. It will take, as I will discuss in a moment, a collective effort and a lot more money than we are spending today. We believe the time is now. According to the Pura Energy Group survey that Rich mentioned in his remarks this morning, the use of natural gas in U.S. trucks and fleet vehicles could skyrocket over the next 2 decades, as lower prices and new infrastructure provide incentives to switch to natural gas. According to the study that he outlined, large trucks and fleet vehicles could reach 14 billion cubic feet per day by 2030. That's about 20% of today's total daily natural gas production. Well, in a worst-case scenario, the study says total demand would be half that amount, about 7 billion cubic feet per day. The high-case scenario would reduce diesel fuel demand by 2.4 million barrels a day, about 2/3 of today's heavy trucking market. And trucks running on LNG would make up about 70% of the 14 billion cubic feet per day. At the same time, and on the consumer side of the equation, as we all know, the White House announced last month new CAFE standards that would raise average fuel economy to 54.4 miles per gallon for cars and light-duty trucks by model year 2025. This comes at a time when our anemic economic recovery has reached a point where pent-up consumer demand, low interest rates, and an easier access to credit have heightened consumer interest in buying new vehicles. This chart is from a recent issue of Automotive News, and it shows the increase in new vehicle consumer purchases in 2012 compared to 2011. So the time is now to put all of our customer segments on a path to buy. Think of our collective challenge as the next great investment banking opportunity. We need to make a market for our stock. What do? How do we find our voice and differentiate our messages? In the interest of time this morning, I've simplified the business case into 5 things we should do and 5 things we should not do. First, let's talk about the things we should not do. As Rich mentioned earlier, we should not allow the public debate on fracking to go unchallenged. We should not kick the NGV development can down the road. We should not delay our investment in public education about NGVs. We should not expect the government to argue our case. And we should not continue to speak in terms that NGVs are some futuristic ideal. The time is now, and NGVs are here. When I say don't let fracking debates influence the future of our industry, I'm talking about not letting them create a negative long-term consumer attitude towards NGVs. It is not a big mental leap to think that early adopters of NGVs are going to be the environmentally conscious consumer. And it would be a lesser leap to think that they may conclude in a messaging environment that is poisoned by prejudice against fracking, however misinformed that may be, that purchasing a natural gas vehicle would be creating more demand for natural gas and by consequence the demand for more fracking. You know, we learned when we launched the Lexus nameplate for Toyota that early adopters were going to make a market for our vehicles. The $90 million in inventory that we sold in the first 6 months went solely to a highly targeted database of only 286,000 households within the 100 markets where we had stores. The fracking-like consumer perception barrier that we had to leap was whether or not Japanese luxury vehicles could be an acceptable alternative to BMWs and Mercedes. You can change consumer perceptions. When we talk about not kicking the NGV development can down the road, we need to do everything as we can as an organization to support the OEMs and folks who are trying to bring new products and services to market, and not do everything we can so that barriers and impediments to getting to market continue to stand in their way. We recognize, of course, that regulations, EPA issues, and for the last 4 years, the lack of investment for products and services have been among those things that are out of our control. But we as a group can find ways to help them and encourage them and move their plans forward. We should not delay our investment in public education, and I'll fall back on some personal experience to tell you why. In the Army, we used to say if you wanted to get to where you're going, you need to prep the landing zone before you got there so you'd have a welcoming environment to achieve your objective. Well, if we allow fracking and the intervention of government to get in the way of that, it's another way that it'll take longer for us to achieve our product marketing and launch objectives. Fracking is a risk, for example, because if that's the high visibility issue for a congressman's constituency, he's not going to go against that constituency to support us. So we have to have a counterbalancing communications plan to neutralize that effort and get the truth out there. We talked about not speaking in terms also that NGVs are some futuristic ideal. You know, it's always next year. It's always next year. It's always next year. Did somebody let Joe Biden in here? It's not next year. It's now. Well, what are the 5 things that we can do? First, we can control the dialogue. Second, we should speak with one voice. We should coordinate our efforts. We should own the social media space. And we should up the ante. I'll talk briefly about each of these. In terms of controlling the dialogue, just as we are currently doing with the NGV Forum, someone needs to control the dialogue, police the facts, deflect misinformation, and create a welcoming environment or that landing zone for our products and services. And when we're talking about speaking with one voice and coordinating our efforts, I was amused recently by a news note that I saw that I thought was directly related to this, that when a number of political action committees had decided to coordinate their advertising messages, and this was after they had spent $170 million on fragmented messages that frequently diluted one message while drowning out another. But it is a good analogy because we face the same challenge in our industry today. We need to coordinate our messages in order for the main one to get through and to optimize the value and the impact of every dollar that we spend. And that's how we get to talking about upping the ante. As an industry group, we need to step up. We need to fund a consistent ANGA-style advertising campaign. Now, I don't think we need to do anything out of the scope that ANGA is doing, but we need a message that's out there consistently and with a message that people become comfortable with about NGVs over time. We need to think about stepping up and working together to have a grassroots public relations program to generate consumer support that will put pressure on Congress to act in our interests versus the frackers. And we've got to show some vehicles so that buyers know that the future of NGVs is already here and that they're being used every day. We don't see messages with workers getting on a natural gas-powered bus to go to work in the morning in New York City. We don't see messages that show a woman taking her garbage out to the sidewalk where it'll be picked up by a gas-powered trash truck. We don't show a mother putting her children on a school bus where they get a safe and secure ride to school on a gas-powered bus. That's the difference between talking about ourselves as an industry and talking about to the future segments whom we expect to buy our vehicles. And fleet owners and managers want the comfort of knowing that they're being supported in their purchases by the way that their products are being envisioned and promoted by the industry. If those are the things that we should do, how do we frame the messages? And what kinds of messages should we have out there? Well, here's another list of 5. Stuck on 5 this morning. Quality, consistency, frequency, honesty, and passion. I think we've talked a little bit about quality and consistency this morning. In terms of quality, we need to maintain the high quality level of production values of the examples that we're showing here this morning in videos. Consistency gets back to speaking with one voice and coordinating our messages with NGVA as the gatekeeper in order for NGVAs to become a credible, branded category that is understood and welcomed by all potential buyers, regardless of where they may be on the path to buy or their individual purchase decision process. And while ANGA has set the standard for what is needed to educate, inform, and win support for natural gas products and services, with your help, NGVA needs to do the same. Honesty and passion, you may think, don't belong in this particular list, but let me tell you why they're there. We need to be prepared to answer hard questions, be truthful. If we don't, we run the risk of all of our efforts, in particular our public relations programs, becoming a continual exercise in crisis management, and we should avoid that. You can't have a conversation with Rich or Steve without being impressed by their depth of knowledge, but also their passion for NGVs. And that passion needs to be used in all of our messages. We need to make an emotional connection with our customers, show some passion and communicate change, because we are change agents, whether we feel that or not. And we need to make every communication a positive statement about the category. Now, in framing these messages, what should the strategy behind framing those messages be? Well, we've narrowed this down not to 5 points, but to 3, because the first is so important. By now, the one key word that should have crossed your mind several times during this presentation is that we need a lot of education. Our messages need to inform and educate the public before we can expect them to empathize with our passion. With consistent frequency and a passionate story based on honesty and truth, clear environmental and customer value propositions, and product feature benefits, we can find our voice and make it work. This ANGA video clip that they produced for New York, I think, comes as close to accomplishing any and all of these messages that I just described. Could we have the second video, please?
The potential for natural gas drilling in this region is huge. We sit on one of the biggest natural gas reserves in the United States, and the economic opportunity here is huge.
I understand from what I'm told that there's enough under our own country to run our country's gas needs for a lot of years.
It can be done safely and responsibly. It has been done safely and responsibly. I think we need to sort through the drama and the theatrics and get to the facts.
There's a lot of information in that ad. There's a lot of education in that ad. And there's a lot of support in the public interest in that ad. When you look at the testimonials at the end of this commercial, you realize that we need to convince fleet owners and managers, consumers, and government officials, 3 important constituencies, that what we are doing is in the public interest. And I'd like to close by quoting from a recent issue of New Energy News, I think came out towards the end of May, and I'm quoting here. Long-term investment, production, manufacturing, and alternative fuel vehicle tax credits, a national renewable energy standard requiring utilities to obtain a portion of their power from new energy sources by a designated date, a price on toxic emissions, a streamlining of permitting complexities, and the opening of transmission corridors are things that would not only promote the general welfare, but achieve what poll after poll shows a bipartisan majority of the voting public wants. Again, I'd like to express my thanks for your kindness in inviting me here today. I hope our comments have been helpful and insightful. I look forward to working with all of you in the future and want you to know that BBG is committed to the success of NGVA and the vision and future that have been outlined here today. Thank you very much.